Welcome back to Sometimes Love Isn't Enough, the Parenting Through Challenges podcast. I am your host, Angie Grant, and today I want to talk about our role in breaking the parenting hierarchy. If I'm being honest, most of us were probably raised in the because I told you so era, right? We were raised in this thought that the parents are in charge, the parents rule the roost, and the kids, many of us were even raised in the, don't speak until spoken to phase of life. I know for myself, there are still moments when that idea of because I said so just wants to pop out of my mouth. That sometimes it feels hard to explain myself, or it feels challenging when I feel like perhaps I've lost a little bit of control in my home. I know when things were so incredibly hard with behaviors with my son in my home that this need to hold control in our home was so powerful for me. And when I perceived that I was losing control in my home, when my son would push back or would question my authority, there was this drive in me that felt like I needed to quickly regain control because I had this false sense of safety about being in control and this fear of not being in control. But here's the scoop. This this sense of security that we gain from control is it's not a problem. Nothing's gone wrong. You're not a bad parent. In fact, it's part of our default wiring. We're wired to want to regain safety as quickly as possible. It's part of being a mammal. We will, without putting much logic behind it, we think we're being logical about it, right? Like, of course, I have to be in charge. The kids don't know how to make the decisions. At least that's what we convince ourselves. I've learned in the past few years, the more that I dig into human design, that our kids are capable of making so many more decisions than we've ever given them credit for, at least in the family structure that I was raised in. And I think that, I was raised to feel relatively empowered. I don't feel like I was raised in a home where there was a lot of control. I feel like dad let us make our own mistakes and learn through them for the most part to the best of his ability. And yet still that idea of the hierarchy, right? The parents are in control, the parents make the decisions, and the kids follow. Well, here's what I know. Energetically, as a society, we are going through this huge energetic shift. For the past 400 years or so, we've lived, survived, and in many ways have grown and thrived in this energy of structures and systems and needing an outside authority, needing something outside of us to tell us what to do, how to make decisions. It was part of what needed to happen for the Industrial Revolution. And in many ways, it's what was needed in parenting, that there had to be this clear hierarchy in order for there to be order instead of chaos. And so I want to talk today, I really want to dig into whether or not this hierarchy is still necessary, at least in the way that it once was. Because it had its place. This hierarchy of parenting had its place. And I'm not suggesting that you and your 4-year-old are buddy buddy, elbow and elbow and making, equal decision making partners. But what I am suggesting is that perhaps we reconsider where that line is because the the compliance that we expected from our kids also came at a cost. It came at some really big costs, in fact. but it was necessary. And so when I think about, where we as a society have been over the past couple of hundred years and how we've evolved and where we're at today, there was a time and place where it was necessary for perhaps more compliance from kids for safety. There was a time and place when if a kid were to question authority, it could have created a situation where families were in danger. It was necessary for survival, for structure, for safety. But the cost of that necessary compliance in our kids was there's so many layers to it. We know that when we expect our kids to be overly compliant, it it puts them in a place to risk their safety. When our kids are taught that they must follow the adults, they must listen to the adults, they must not question the adults. Well, then what happens when they're in a compromising situation, maybe with a teacher or a relative who's trying to take advantage of them? But we've taught them that they're supposed to be compliant. They're not supposed to question the adults. Well, we're we're not empowering them to stick up for themselves. So that I think is one huge cost of compliance was that it put our kids in a position to be more vulnerable to being taken advantage of. I also think that when we teach our kids, or we not just teach, but we live in this hierarchy where the adults are the only ones that know and can make decisions, it creates a disconnect between us and our kids. It creates this hierarchical authority where there's a bit of a lack of trust, and our kids won't come to us when they really are struggling, when our kids really are hurt. And I don't know about you, but when I look around at families, at humans right now, today in early 2026, a lot of people are struggling. Kids are struggling. Our teenagers are struggling, and they're afraid for so many reasons. And I want to do my part to make sure that I'm a safe space for our kids to come to. And perhaps you do too. But when we have this hierarchy, it creates a disconnection. It creates a distance between us and our kids, and creates a space where when our kids need us most, they may perhaps be afraid. They may not quite trust that they'll be safely held when they need to. I think that that's a huge cost to our kids. I also know that when there's this hierarchy of you as the child do good, then that pleases me. That makes me happy. And when you don't listen to me, that displeases me. That makes me unhappy, right? This is what traditional parenting has looked like over the past several decades, if not longer. But I know through myself and through so many people in my life and people not in my life, people that I see in social media, media, just learning through the human experience is that hierarchy in parenting has created a lot of people pleasing, which has left humans so disconnected from what's right for them because we are so trained and conditioned to try to figure out what's right for everybody else at our own detriment, at a cost to our own well-being. We're so busy trying to appease those who are higher than us, those who are more powerful than us, and it comes at a cost. That for decades, if not, well, I would say for generations, obedience has been prioritized over really understanding our kids. That we hope or we expected our kids to be obedient, to listen to us. I still hear everywhere that I go that I see parents working or parents, trying to teach their kids. I hear that idea of you need to listen to me. And I'm not saying again, like I'm not saying like let's let the kids run amok because there are boundaries within this, but I want to push the boundaries. I want us to start looking at our kids differently because they need us to. So I had kind of touched on a little bit that there are a few reasons why old ways of parenting isn't working anymore. One of them is um this energetic shift that is happening that is so much bigger than any of us. We feel it happening all around us, this move away from structures and outside authority and systems. We're moving out of that energy that we've been in for centuries, and we're moving in to an individual empowerment era. And individual empowerment doesn't necessarily mean uh, me for myself, but what it means is we need to be able to trust ourselves. We need to be able to connect with ourselves in order to step up and be a better version of ourselves. But in order for us to do that, we have to be able to trust ourselves. We have to be able to listen to ourselves. We have to be able to, in some ways, shut out outside opinions, outside ideas, outside authority, and to really start trusting ourselves in a way that we were never really given permission to do before. But we, this is what is happening around us. We see so much evidence of it, whether or not you follow human design, which really tells the story of how our energy is shifting. Whether or not you follow that, it doesn't matter. We see evidence of it all around us that you go to the local coffee shop or you look at our kids at school or you engage with other parents and we see so much evidence that it isn't just about how kids are parented. It's about what is happening at a energetic level. That kids today are more aware. They're more sensitive. Kids today are more expressive with what's going on with them in such a deeper way than we ever were even allowed to in previous generations. Our kids today are not being wired to blindly follow. Our kids aren't being wired to just be compliant because as a society, it isn't necessary anymore. And as a humanity is evolving. The problem is that when we carry on old ways of parenting, when we try to control our kids, they're pushing back more and more than they did even just one generation ago, or two generations ago, or three generations ago. You know, our kids, they push back or they shut down. So when we use control with our kids who are progressively wired differently, our kids push back or they shut down. And I don't know about you, but I feel like, I've been hearing since I was a kid that the kids are the future. But I don't know if we parent in a way that really treats our kids like they are the future. We parent our kids in a way that teaches them that it is their job to copy what we do and that it's our job to teach them right from wrong and they shouldn't trust themselves. And yet they're the future. And so, what if we empower our kids to trust themselves more and more? But we don't do that, right? We try to control our kids and they push back. And this is where then we look at our kids like we have a defiant child or a behavioral child. But what if instead of our kids being defiant, it's really that our kids are more aware? What if instead of having a kid with problem behaviors, it's a kid who is a little bit more in tune with their inner knowing, with tapping into what their gut is telling them, and they're not just going to follow along with the adults like perhaps you did or I did. What if what we're looking at as these behavior problems with our kids, where we're medicating them and we're so desperately seeking diagnoses, what if what is really happening is that our kids are trying to show us that they're more capable than we ever thought they were? Because I don't think that, well, it's not that I don't think it. So some of our kids are energetically designed to need to feel more empowered. We can easily look at that as some of our kids are designed to engage in more power struggles. So are some adults. But I really want to reframe that for myself and for you, that when we look at those power struggles, it really is a child who has this deep, deep innate need for autonomy, which can look like the mistaken motivation of power, or a child who really has this deep need to feel seen and heard for what they know, which is really a child who needs connection, a child who's seeking how to connect with themselves, connect with you in a way that maybe as a parent, you weren't given that same gift by your parents because they didn't know. What if also what's really underneath what we look at as power struggles or defiance is really our kiddos who who have a dysregulated nervous system? It's not that they're being willfully defiant, but as I kind of started out and saying in this episode, is that we feel at an energetic level what's happening. I the social media groups that I'm in, time after time, it's just parents saying like, my nervous system is fried. My anxiety is so high. I've never felt like this before. I just keep hearing it time and time again. Well, I know two things. One, um, until the age of 7, our kids rely on our energy. They rely on us for co-regulation. They rely on our aura until at least the age of 7. But even after that, our families rely on us to be regulated, right? If we're dysregulated, our families often don't know what to do, and then they become dysregulated right along with us. If we're feeling anxious, especially if you have kiddos who have an open emotional solar plexus, if we're feeling anxious, our kiddos can really feel that as well. Or if we're struggling to see our value because we're having this battle of the hierarchy about my kids are willful and they're defiant, and I don't know what to do about that, and it's causing us to question our value as a parent, that that is felt in our homes, right? Our kids feel that from us, even when we're trying our very best to keep our personal struggles away from our kids, they feel it. So, what if we look at power struggles not so much as a behavior problem, but more as a relationship signal, as some really powerful insight about what our kids are going through so that we can step up for them differently? Because our kids need us to step up for them differently. This this is really the the foundation of everything that I do here on this podcast with my clients and the workshops that I do is really about helping parents to see that if we want a different trajectory for our kids, where our kids feel empowered and not questioning their self-worth, and we want our kids to feel aligned and not feel like they need somebody outside of them to tell them what's right for them. Because how in the heck could anybody outside of us know what's right for us? But that's what we've been taught. If we want our kids to trust themselves, trust their own emotions, feel aligned, feel empowered, not question their value, not question whether or not they're lovable, then it requires us to not just use different parenting tools than our parents did. It requires us to have different beliefs about our kids. And it requires us to be coming at it from a regulated state, to that we are not in this reactive state where we're repeating old patterns. So, what happens if we redefine what authority or that hierarchy really looks like in our family? it isn't about removing leadership, right? Like you are the parent. You are in charge at home. And it isn't about being permissive either. This isn't about gentle or permissive parenting where we let the kids run amok and do whatever they want. It's about us being regulated, us being grounded. It's about us as parents creating boundaries that may look different than the boundaries that your parents created for you. It's about moving from this authority over our kids to a leadership with our kids. So let's dig into what this type of empowerment in your home could actually look like. What if, instead of telling your kids what they need to do, what if you ask them questions that are aligned to their energetic design? So, for your kiddos who are a generator type, asking them yes, no questions so they can really tap into their sacral, let their sacral respond instead of their head. And for our non-sacral type kids, non-generator kids, to give them open-ended choices or open-ended questions, statements, so that they can really tap into what feels right for them. I think that that's a powerful way to start stepping in to this this more leading the family with your kids and removing that need for this hierarchy in the way that it once was. Another example about how this empowerment for our kids might look different than perhaps when you were growing up is pulling your kids into the why, explaining to them why you're making certain decisions. And this isn't about sharing your adult problems with your kids, but it's about helping them see how you came to your conclusion. And then, when appropriate, letting your kids make some of the decisions. I know in our home, we really strive to let the two toddlers, so they're 2 and 3 years old, we really strive to let them make decisions not only for themselves, right? Like, we'd let them pick out the clothes they're going to wear, um, within parameters, let them pick out what they're going to eat, let them help set up the menu for the week about what we're going to have for dinner. We give them so many choices. But I also make a conscious choice to let, at least for now, the older of the two, the other one, she's still pretty little, but I let the 3-year-old make decisions about things for myself or for the family, for things that are, it wouldn't matter if she chose choice A, B, or C, but the idea being that instead of me being the one who's being the authority and creating this hierarchy, that I'm really showing her that she has a powerful voice in the family. She's the one who, being a manifesting generator type, she really needs to feel empowered. And giving her that choice in the family and then asking her or saying like, wow, you look proud, or did it feel good to make a decision like that? Uh, it it's a way that I can help her feel more empowered and more, um, building up her leadership at a very young age, but helping her see that her job is not to be blindly compliant because those days are gone. And they're not safe for her, quite frankly. They're not safe for any of our kids to be blindly compliant to the adults in their life. But when we are able to allow our kids to have a voice, when we are explaining to our kids, when we're empowering our kids to have a part in the leadership decisions that happen in your family, you get to continue to hold boundaries, right? You still get to have rules about, you know, TV off by a certain time or bedtime by a certain time or, no eating snacks on the couch or whatever that might be, but it doesn't, it, how do I say this? Like, you still get to hold your boundaries, but what I'm really suggesting is being more flexible about what the other option is. Because I think as parents, it's like I think about the example, right? So the kids often want to eat on the couch or in the living room. And there's a boundary that there's no eating on the couch in the living room. It's just a boundary that I have. But that doesn't mean that they have to sit at the dining room table to eat. We say, there's no snacks on the couch, but you could sit here on the floor with a napkin. You could sit at the table. We could go sit out on the front porch and have a picnic. What feels good to you? And we give them options so that it's they're feeling empowered. They're part of the leadership decision, but I'm still holding the boundary in the home. Right. And that's what I mean. It isn't about letting the kids run amok. It isn't about letting the kids take over. But it is about empowering our kids because, quite frankly, when we're in these control struggles or power struggles with our kids, not only does it feel gross for them, but it feels gross for us, right? Because we regret the things that we say. We didn't ever actually really win because our kids are pushing back more. Our kids are trying to figure out where their space is in this world. And so when we exert our power as the leaders in our home, it doesn't end good for us or for them. We might get what we think we wanted, but it comes at a cost of our relationship. It comes at a cost of then questioning whether or not we know how to parent our kids. And I don't want to lose sight of that message that this isn't about whether or not you're a good parent. It's about noticing those patterns from past generations and why they were there and they served a good purpose and they're not necessary anymore. And so having this awareness to start really noticing what are those patterns that I repeat that aren't good for me, they're not good for my relationship with my kiddos, they're not empowering my kiddos. What are some of those patterns that I'm ready to break? Because this this is the work that I can help you do is really helping you to see energetically what your kids need from you. Our kids are wired so incredibly differently, and so are you. Your needs as a parent are unique. I can't tell you what's right for you in your home. I can shed light on perhaps seeing things in a different way through a more expanded way of seeing our kids. I think that that is my role. It is in my design. I am a pattern breaker. And if I do nothing else for you other than helping you see that perhaps there's a pattern to be broken, then I know that I have done my part. But I'd love to help you take it further. You have such unique needs. Your kids have such unique needs. And even when we know our design, it's not all magic and sunshine and roses. It's not like, whoa, now we know exactly what we need and everything's easy peasy moving forward. Absolutely not. Because as humans, we also have needs, right? We have needs to feel empowered. We have needs to feel like we belong. We have needs to be loved. We have needs to be accepted for who we are. And when our needs aren't met, then every single one of us engages in mistaken motivations, where we communicate to the person in that relationship what we need, but we don't usually do it in a very effective way. We engage in behaviors that tell them we have this unmet need. And we might use words, but usually the words seem to be a bit of a mismatch between what we need. So, really understanding your energetic needs and your kids, understanding how to decipher mistaken motivations, and also the important part in all of this is really having powerful tools to regulate yourself. Because when you're dysregulated, you will default to wanting to regain control. It makes you feel safe. It makes all of us feel safe. I watch myself do it. I do so much work to keep myself regulated. And yet, sometimes things pop up and I try my best to regain control. I pull those reins in a little bit tighter. And then I have this awareness like, oh, huh, yeah, that I didn't need to control that. But what's going on inside of me that I felt like I needed more control? Where do I feel like I've lost a little bit of control? When I know that and I can regulate my nervous system from that angle, then everything changes. And I'm going to go back to it again, right? I'm human, but I have tools to notice, to regulate, and to get back on track. So I I I know that we we really can't raise our kids to be empowered when we ourselves are dysregulated. And I also know that you feel if you don't control everything, things will fall apart, or the kids will walk all over you, or you'll just lose total control. But what if that isn't true? What if what you perceive as letting the reins a little bit looser? What if your fear of everything falling apart isn't true? And what if your kids actually trust you a little bit more because you've pulled them into the fold? What would change in your family then? Because I don't know about you, but I am on this relentless mission to keep fine tuning and giving myself grace when I mess it up, but keep fine tuning the way that I show up for the people that I love most because I won't be here forever. And I know that it is up to my kids and my grandkids to continue on with wherever humanity is going. And I want my kids and my grandkids to feel empowered to do it in a way that feels right for them. I don't want them to just be blindly compliant to whatever they're told to do. But I know that along that path, I'm going to screw up. And maybe you will too. And that's okay because we we get to repair. We get that opportunity to show our kids how to repair, to say like, whoa, you know, I I feel like this morning I felt like I had kind of lost control. There were some things happening at work that I feel like I kind of lost my power over what was happening with my job, for example. And I kind of took that out on you. And I was, trying to control your decisions with breakfast this morning. And it's silly, but I'm sorry that that happened. And I noticed it and I'm apologizing. And I'm going to try my best to not do it again. But if I do, you know, say, hey, mom, is something making you feel like you've lost control? I feel like you're kind of controlling right now, right? Give your kids permission to correct you. Think about how empowering that is for our kids. So, as we kind of wrap up here today, I want you to leave with this message that our kids don't need more control. They need us to guide them. My mentor, she'll often say that it is our role to be stewards for our kids' energy. And I love that. I love it at my core because when I think about my kids and my grandkids that way, that it is not my job to make sure they don't screw up, right? It is my job to empower them, to be a steward for their energy, to really see them in a way that I know my parents didn't see me, but I have this gift that I get to see my kids and my grandkids through this lens. And I have it to share with you too. Our kids need guidance. They need us to help keep them safe, but I put a little bit of a nugget of caution with that is what we perceive to be unsafe sometimes is just our mind taking over. It is our job to keep our kids physically safe, but don't let your need for safety go down that spiral of being a need for control because it's easy to do. We all do it. And I think that it is our role to give our kids space to become themselves, whoever that is. So you're not raising obedient kids, you're raising kids or humans who are learning how to trust themselves. So when you're ready to really understand your kids, to really dig in deep, to their energetic needs, to really dig into your energetic needs, to understand what the heck mistaken motivations are, and to regulate yourself. This is the work that I do. I encourage you to join me for a connection clarity call where I will help you see exactly what's getting in your way of really building the relationship that you want with your kids. So until next time, happy connecting.